I just wondered.
I think you can send files here.
All right.
That's a little complex for me.
That today I had permission from one of the contributors to the album. Well,
Yeah.
perhaps I'll just say a little bit about the album. What I'm doing, everybody, so ET Newsroom here in the UK, I was formerly known as the Amash Project. I had a colleague who went toxic and I basically had to close, I was forced to close the Amash Project down, but I'm doing the same kind of work, except I've expanded the base. What I did do was to interview experiences on camera and radio. Had my own radio show called The Amash Files, which Grant appeared on and many others over time, but that finished end of 2015-16. So in between times, I've written a book about an English guy's incredible experience, age 44 when he had a download, all the rest of that. And now I've got a passion to get this music out. And the music I've put together is a compilation album of experiences, singer-songwriters, all original music, and it's from Canada, America, and the UK. And this album is now together. We're just now laying down the tracks. I've got all the experiences are coming in to do the work. So one of the experiences, a guy called Dan Vallely, I've just realized I've been saying his name incorrectly, who actually lives quite close to me, amazingly. He's a Scottish guy. He had an amazing experience, just a quick overview of that. About 5 years ago, he had a stroke at a very young age of 40-something. He was in hospital a week in Glasgow, only to have no doctors or specialists visit him in 1 week. It's almost unheard of. And 3 a.m. one morning, he pops over to the nurse station and says, "Look, have I had a stroke? What's going on?" And there was a doctor there, popped her head out and said, "Oh, yes, Mr. Vallely, you have. But what we're really interested in," and this is an interesting term she used, "is the artifact in your brain." So when I met up with Dan about 2-3 years ago, he didn't have this scan. So now we got the scan. We've got the scan of the implant. And so he's not only an experienced singer-songwriter and artist, he's doing the album cover for us. And I will be doing something on the scans. I've got 1 or 2, I've got about 3 scans now, brain scans showing implants.
Wow. How many musicians?
Well, so we've got about 20, including myself. I'm not a musician, but I've written a musical a long time ago called Fifth Dimension about ET stuff, and I'm including a couple of songs on the album, but otherwise it's about 20 we've got, which is fantastic. And I'm including, I say musicians, people, we've got 2 lots of people who are Grant, you're featured as one of the tracks, and so is Chris Bledsoe, actually 3, and we've got some people from in the UK. There's an amazing group called the Biolocation Team who started off as dowsers. These are science people looking at ancient archaeology. They had 0 interest in ET. Down the years, what they found is ET everywhere and evidence of it, and I am putting something together about that, but it's very complicated and I need some time to pull that together. So it's very exciting, but I've got a couple of sound bites from those guys explaining about how they found ET in ancient architecture and archaeology. So this is a kind of very different departure into the world of ufology, very different kind of evidence, using archaeological terms and references. So the album now is it's a compilation album, mainly, of course, of music, but with each of the musicians, bar 1 or 2, have given me a 1 to 2 minute soundbite, also preceding their tracks, just about their experiences, encapsulating what that has been. So it's an album that's very different, and it's a genre that is not a genre musically, so the music is eclectic. The album's called Eclectia because of the, we've got classical musicians like John Martin, who I was just about to reference, a guy from the UK called Matt King, and then we've got Kevin Estrella providing some wonderful, great electrical rock for us, amongst everything else you can imagine in musical styles, apart from rap. Can't do rap. It's a rap-free zone.
Wow.
I may be taken to task for that, but I'm standing my ground on it. I can't do it.
Wow.
So this album, I'm hoping, will be released in the summer. I know we're in the summer now, but July, possibly August. So we're really, really close.
Wow.
So very exciting. So that's what you're contributing to, Grant, because I think it is going to be wonderful for people to hear this eclectic mix of beautiful music, really funky stuff, and then some kind of insights into what it's really like to have had these experiences, and also from a researcher like yourself and some of the biolocation team of this disparate, incredible research on from yourself, the music, the paranormal effect on musicians and all that. And I was just listening to, just before I came on to speak with you guys, a guy called Dan Boskill, who's also appearing on the album. He's a reggae guy, and he was just talking about his experiences on the radio show. I just found the interview from 2015. And he was just talking. He said, well, you do know that all music is channeled. And and I thought, well, okay. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it in those terms. But he said, yeah, all music's channeled. So that's his opinion. So anyway, it's very interesting that these experiences are providing a platform and a window for the public to engage, because it's kind of moving away from the normal formulaic way that we've been working in ufology, if you want to use that term, over the past years. This is a bit of a departure. And for some reason, I find myself a little bit like you, Grant. I consider myself a bit of a, you use the term, a musical idiot. Me also, I can't sing, I can't read music, but I just, know what I like, and I have a passion for it for some reason. I love to listen to it, though not often enough. So it's brought me to this point, to birth this incredible album with these amazing people. So we've got a fantastic lot of folks, and we're hoping that this will just be the start of more albums to come, and it will become a platform or a window where the public can hook in and really get their attention to open discussion. That's what it's really about, raising awareness in a longer, kind of more expanded way, I guess, education, but in a fun way. And just presenting people with the music is excellent. It's top professional stuff. This isn't amateur hour here. This is, being done for the commercial market. And we'll see where it goes. I'm learning on the hoof. I haven't done this before, so it's interesting.
Well, I'm going to be on Coast to Coast with my music book, so I will plug your deal. And I'd probably like to do an interview with you down the road to go through the whole project. How did you find the 20 experiencers?
I put out a shout out, actually. I put out, interestingly enough, there's a pop star of the 80s called Kim Wilde over in the UK.
Oh, yeah.
Her dad was Marty Wilde. And in 2009, she began talking, she mentioned that she had a big sighting experience here in the kind of center of England. Anyway, 2016, March 2016, she released an album called Here Come the Aliens. And what's really interesting about this, because I'd already started work on the album, I actually started work on the album late January, February time. So we've only been doing this for four and a half months or so. And I've just been driven. I can't tell you. It's like something is pushing me and pushing to get this out in a particular time frame. I have no understanding why. But anyway, back to Kim Wilde. One day I was just prompted, apropos of nothing, to switch on the radio. And the words I heard coming out of the radio were, "Here come the aliens." And this is a middle of the road, kind of radio show. And you never expect to hear that. And I thought, what? What's that? Wow. And they were talking about Kim Wilde's new album. And I even went to see her. I was hoping to connect and hoping that she might contribute a track to the show, to the album, but we didn't manage to catch up. But what she did do, what an ambassador for disclosure. She's been on breakfast TV, she's been on whatever, and she's even been in her show. She stood center stage on her own and said, I want to tell you that this is real, this is serious. and this happened, and there was a little bit of an awkward silence, and then she just was absolutely wonderful. She went into her performance mode, and she said, and here's my song that I've written for the aliens, and she did her song. And so, oh my God, this woman is creating this fantastic disclosure platform. Just, you know, she's adding to it. So then there's another guy called Roy Grady, who's quite famous over here. He does a radio show, and he does lots of things with looking after animals. Anyway, he's very popular. And apparently on his radio show, he mentioned something about the aliens and how he'd seen some craft over a place called Kent, not a million miles from where I live in the UK. And that he thought, because this was on the back of Kim Wilde suddenly going public, why she's done it in 2018 and not 2009, I don't know about that. Haven't been able to have a conversation with her, but he said, you know, this is fantastic, and yes, I totally believe it's real. So more and more people, popular celebrities, are going on the record in the UK, it seems. So I was called by the BBC radio to comment on this guy's call and comment. And the very slightly vitriolic radio host let me on. Normally, if they get my comment, they want my comment, it's normally for two minutes. But they had me on for 9 minutes. So I just went for it. Apart from just, you know, telling this guy about the reality of the ET stuff, we had a good conversation about that one. I just did a big shout out to the country about the album. So we got 1 or 2 people that way. And then just recommendations. And we've got the wonderful Merrill Fankhauser that you introduced me to. He's headlining the album. And he's got over 300 DJs in California who are getting ready as soon as I'm ready to send him the master. And he's even going to copy it for me. We're doing this on Fresh Air as well. Honestly, I'm about to start a Patreon or something like that fund in the next week or so. Once I get the album delivered to me concretely, which is due to happen in the next 5 to 10 days. And then we'll start with the PR and stuff. But so we've had a lot of people coming from, and somebody mentioned the album on Fade to Black as well. Heidi Neal, a friend and colleague of mine, gave a shout out to it on Jimmy Church's Fade to Black, and we got another person from there. So they've come from all over the place, but basically it's been word of mouth as well. And some wonderful people came forward. So we have really got an exciting lineup, and Merrill is going to get the album played on by all these 300 DJs in California as soon as I get it out there. And he's been driving me as well, bless him. He's been amazing, offering his support. Absolutely wonderful guy, really thrilled about what's happening with this album, and the fact that there is an album, that it's just experiences, because as you well know, Grant, I'm from the Alien Rock book written by Michael Luckman, who wrote about, and I think you and Merrill told me about that book, which was, news to me at the time, about all these famous people, including Elvis. Yay!
Yeah. Elvis, the Beatles, the Stones, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And so that absolutely heightened my awareness. And of course, a lot of these bands have done their own songs about, their experiences, but nobody has ever before brought experiences together, singer-musicians, original singer-songwriter musicians on one album. So most of these folks are unknown. We're breaking new ground here. This really is a world first. So it's very exciting. It really is exciting. And I think that there's a possibility that we may just grab a toehold, if you like, in the public mind. And again, as I said before, this is just a way of opening dialogue, creating more discussion, opening people's mind about this, because disclosure is happening. I mean, Kim Wilde's doing it, you're doing it, Grant, everybody here is doing it. Wonderful job. But we still haven't broken that kind of glass ceiling. And I think the glass ceiling is showing a few cracks now.
Yeah. You mentioned Merrill Fankhauser, who, for people who don't know, wrote the song Wipeout from the 1960s, a surf rocker.
Yeah.
And had a UFO sighting and wrote a song about it, and actually sang the song for John Lennon in California, so in person. So Very interesting. Glad you're going down the same route. And as I said, I will sort of promote it on Coast to Coast because I'm doing the music book show on Coast to Coast. I invited a couple. I guess Doug, I don't know, have you got Doug Alt? No?
Are you speaking to me or generally?
Yeah, to you.
I'm sorry, no, I don't know Doug. Excuse me, Doug, sorry.
Okay, yeah, he's probably watching hockey tonight, but he's an experiencer who's extremely good painter and has done some music as well, and he's an experiencer. Is there any experiencers on here who want to jump on? To give you sort of the idea how this thing works, the bottom left-hand corner, everybody is, Desta is helping run the thing here. In the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see the mute button. You'll just unmute yourself if you want to talk, and you should keep the thing muted because if your kid is screaming or something happens in the background, you will be seen by everybody. Your camera immediately comes on. So is there any experiencers here who have written music or want to add to this?
Well, I've had a UFO sighting. I guess that makes me an experiencer, but I haven't written any music.
Okay. Yeah, so
what I'd just like to share, Grant, as well, if I may, because this is like hot off the press. John Martin, who is featuring on the album as a classical piece with his beautiful classical guitar, shared with me privately a letter which I can now talk about. But I'd asked his permission to share it openly, and he was a bit nervous because of the, how things can get dragged through the mud, and he definitely didn't want that. And I've done a 3-minute audio of his letter to explain it. So I don't know whether you'd like to hear that.
Sure.
Now I can. I'm just saying, yeah, I can. I don't know if I can load it here. It is only 3 minutes, and I've just done it. We just got permission yesterday to use this, and you might be interested, Grant, because it references Jimmy Carter.
Oh.
Just about the UFO thing, and this is some correspondence that John had, and then what John's experience was on the back of a discussion with President Carter about UFOs. So I'm just trying to see.
John Martin, classical guitarist, composer, and arranger who features on the E.T. album Eclectia, has given me permission to share some of the contents of a private letter, as I thought you too would find this of interest. This letter was the result of some correspondence between John and President Jimmy Carter when they'd had occasion to speak about UFOs. This was President Carter's response to John's account. He says, "John, thanks for the CDs, photos, and the wonderful account. Best wishes, Jimmy Carter." John writes, "As a musician for nearly the past 50 years, I can share with you, and with great confidence, music is the universal language. In 2013, I made the conscious effort to perform music with the intent of projecting positive thoughts and musical works into the universe. On only my second session of performing classical, rock, romantic, impressionist, and original works on classical guitar out on my deck, and again with the conscious thought of projecting music, positive thought, peace, and love into the universe, an incredible event occurred. A purple, bell-shaped, luminous craft with a pink, rotating ring circling outside the bottom third of the bell silently floated directly above our home. All the alarms in the house, including the refrigerator, were going off. A surge protector on my musical equipment began smoking. My significant other saw the craft with me as it slowly crossed over us and then disappeared behind the tree line. It was at an altitude of no more than a couple of 100 feet above us. It was breathtaking. A few days later, 4 craft, in 2 sets of 2 and in a perfect line, were silently spinning above our courtyard. A few days after that, the big ones came." John also describes another interesting phenomena which occurred after an immense cross-shaped and crescent-shaped UFO flew over his courtyard. There was a projection into his mind that he would have something to photograph soon, and within 10 days, a large heart-shaped cloud appeared over his property. And in fact, over time, there have been more of these heart-shaped clouds that have appeared as if in response and appreciation of his energies being sent out into the universe. Toward the end of the letter, John goes on to say, as a religious person, I feel these experiences are more correctly interpreted as universal in nature as opposed to a religious experience.
There we go, folks.
Beautiful. Thank you.
So anyway, it was just that it was a letter that he'd written to Jimmy Carter, and Carter had responded, and he'd given me a private view of that. When I said this would be really great to share, he was a bit nervous about it, obviously, but anyway.
You have to speak up, Joanne.
Oh, I said anyway, he's allowed it to go through now, so there we go.
Okay. Yeah, this is a sort of a unique phenomenon. I wrote a book on just now on music and the UFO connection. It is a very direct connection. What do you think is going on, Joanne? Why do you think musicians have this bizarre connection to UFOs?
I think it's that left brain thing. I really believe that the creatives amongst us just have an orientation of in that direction. And when there's focus of a particular strata, in this case music, that this funnel of energy somehow is accessed and it expands into this universal mind, or whatever we want to call it. It just seems to be a lot more, but when I say left brain, then you hear about, scientists who also have had these experiences too. And what comes to mind? It's David Adair, the savant rocket guy. And
yeah.
when he met Stephen Hawking when he was only, I don't know, 13, 14, something like that. And the reason that he met Stephen Hawking was because David Adair had come unstuck at some of his maths, and he'd come to a bit of a roadblock, and his tutor said, can I show these to some people at the local university? I think it was Ohio. And he said, well, yes, of course. And someone said, hey, where'd you get Stephen Hawking's stuff? And he said, this isn't Stephen Hawking's, this is David Adair's. And anyway, long story short, Hawking met Adair, and then Adair proceeded to wipe off part of Hawking's maths, which was a great part of the story, and then rewrote it. And when Hawking said, how do you validate that, what you've just done? He said, that's a rocket ship. That is the propulsion. And then he turned to David Adair and said, well, where does this come from? How do you get this information? And David Adair thought, well, in for a penny, in for a pound. And he said, well, I get it in dreams, and went to walk out thinking that was the end of that conversation. And Hawking said to him, well, we dream on the same wavelength. And I thought, wow, that says it all. So there is something about, I don't know whether it's a spiritual connection, an aspect of our DNA that gets fired when we access certain thought streams, thought processes. It's difficult to know exactly, but it seems that, it is something that can be open to everyone, depending on how you're looking. And it seems to be an intentional thing, like a focus, like a real intention to access some resolution, whether it's to that maths problem or to some musical sounds. And like Dan Boskill was just saying, the guy who's also on the album, and I was just listening to him saying, well, all music is channeled. And I actually had forgotten he'd said that, and I hadn't even thought about that. I hadn't remembered he'd said that. So maybe all music, maybe everything we're doing is channeled. I don't know, it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
Hello? Yeah. Well, isn't music, that's a right brain phenomena, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I think we're in a culture where we have kind of maximized our logos ego, which is left brain. And what we need is more right brain, or eros ego consciousness. I had a general question. Has anybody done a study on the symbolism of the geometry of UFOs? What they might mean from a symbolic point of view. Like I noticed the image she showed of a UFO there. It looked like two sombreros, one on the top and another one on the bottom. You know, hats, big brimmed hats, and that would speak to you know, shading your logos from the sun and entering an introverted state of consciousness, kind of like you do when you get into music. You go into an altered state of consciousness.
Wow.
Something like that. Just a general question. Has anybody in the UFO field done a symbolic analysis of the various shapes of UFOs that have appeared, that are appearing?
I'm not aware of. Have you done anything like that, or because you must have thought about that?
Who are you speaking to me?
No, whoever. Yeah, I know there's a lot on the symbols. I mean, there's these symbols are starting to appear with various experiencers, like Emily Trim from the 62 School Kids. She's doing all these paintings with the symbols in the paintings. So I see some of that, but in terms of the craft shape, I'm not sure.
Well, that shape.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, can I speak? Hi, I'm Rob. He mentioned the two hats. It reminds me of I can't remember. There was a video that I watched. It was with a dance, a native dance, and the person. He wore this outfit, and that when he would spin, the upper part of his costume and the bottom part of his costume formed a shape like two hats like that. However, it looked like a vortex.
Mm.
So, you know, I'm just throwing that out there as far as the two hats, you know, above each other. And the way a vortex looks if you look at it in 2D.
Yes, I think that's a very interesting comment. You know, the two hats kind of remind me of the chakra system. The upper three chakras are connected to our world of space-time, and the lower three chakras are connected to the other world of the feminine principle. And so you got masculine and feminine, the upper three chakras being the masculine from a symbolic point of view. So it's like a connutio image of the male and the female coming together, so to speak. Anyway, well, here's an interesting image of different shapes. And I like that dirigible one, the large dirigible. That is very interesting because that is this Pisa. It's the center of a spindle torus, in which sacred geometry would construct a diamond. And so it's a reference like to the building up of the subtle body or of our consciousness. It's the diamond body of the East. So it's a tie-in of the UFOs with consciousness, which I know Grant has talked about, and there's a growing consensus that the UFOs come to want to enhance our consciousness somehow. But I think if we are going to understand that alien language, we got to get into the symbolism and the meaning of the symbols that they are presenting, the colors that are coming with these things, and what people experience. Like I think of Jim Pennison and his Redishun forest, and when he touched the UFO and all those symbols were on it. I think there's an area of real research that could be done there. So I'd be curious, Grant, if somewhere down the road you talk around these UFO circles and see if you can find anybody that's trying to do that.